scroll bowls, you've probably discovered that as soon as you move away from straight-sided bowls to a bowl, even a simple bowl that has curves, or a more elaborate bowl that has lobes, or lobes and curves, you need something that will handle the exterior. And that something is some sort of flexible pad sander, generally chucked into a drill press, which gives you the greatest control for shaping. Now, when you're sanding the outside of your bowls, you're doing two things. The first thing that you're doing is shaping it. Whether it's shaping, basic shaping to remove the excess material, or whether it's shaping to carve in, that's a special function of sanding, closer to carving than sanding itself. And the second function is sanding in a conventional manner, which means preparing the surface for taking a finish, as when we sand through the grits to make the finish, the wood silky smooth before applying our first coat of finish. Both of these are handled by the flexible pad sander, which I call a flexi pad sander, even though this particular name is given depends on who's selling it. Klingspor's Woodworking Shop is one major supplier of these, and also the Sanding Glove is another major supplier that gives you quite a bit of versatility in what's available. When I started out making bowls, since there was no guidance, I bought several things to see what worked for me. I bought a 3-inch sander and a 2-inch, and quickly found I did not have the control for a 3-inch, so that lived in my box for a number of years. And the workhorse became the 2-inch sander. I also bought a 1.5-inch, and I think I also bought a 1-inch that I threw away because it was so small that the Velcro, all of these work with a hook and loop system, simply did not hold. There was too little Velcro and too much sanding dust, and the pad just fell off, and it was just no good. So that if you're just starting out and say, tell me, what should I get to start with? This is the one you want, 2-inch of medium density. So you say, what do you mean there's more than one kind of 2-inch? Well, that's what I'm going to be talking about today. All of the variations and how to make the wisest choice. Starting off with size. If you're going to be sanding a simple shape, a regular shape, the 3-inch, if you can manage it, will cover more ground, it's a more aggressive sander, and is preferable. When I tried it recently, I was pleased to find that with my increased skills, and hey, if your skills don't increase over years of doing the same thing, there's something wrong. I found I really liked it for that purpose, but I did not like it if I had anything fidgety to work with. It was just too much, too aggressive, and I needed more control. And as you know, once you remove wood that you shouldn't have removed, there really is no way to put it back. So it's better to go slow and take your time. All right, so that size is one variable. The density of the pad is another variable. These are fairly firm. They come in firm, medium, and also soft densities. The soft pad, which is very soft, is not much good for putting pressure on and shaping, but is excellent if you want to sand something that's already smooth. Let's say I have this at 320 grit and I want to take it up to 400. Everything is smooth. I've gotten out all the lumps that I'm going to be able to get out. I want to get into some of these spaces, but I don't want to gouge. This will just ride along and allow me to take very nice strokes and to polish it up without distorting the shape. So that once you hit 220 grit or finer and are doing finishing work, this is something definitely worth considering. Now, to preserve your sanders, which tend to run between about $9 and $13 each, you can get various interface pads. These also are hook and loop, system that attach to the bottom of your sander. It increases your reach in the event you're using it to sand inside. It lets you go in a little deeper because it's thicker. It also protects the Velcro so that this takes the wear and tear. And since these you're talking about from about $4 a pad, are a lot cheaper. And these also come in firm, medium, and soft versions, so you can mix and match, and it gives you a lot of control on how much pressure you want to exert. I was amazed when I took a recent look at the catalog offerings, because I wanted to be current when I made this video, that you really did have between those two sites a tremendous number of alternatives, and none of them are terribly expensive. All right, so we have pad size, we have pad density, we have interface pads. And now let's turn our attention to what you put on them, the discs themselves. These come sized for the pads. Although if you have a 3-inch and you need that for your 2-inch, you can, of course, cut it down. That's not a problem. For each size, the discs can be found in a scalloped version or a plain version. The advantage of the scalloped version is that it curves around the edges, so that as you sand, if you're going up to an edge, it will ride over it rather than gouge it, so that it's touted as the antidote to gouging. Now, if you push hard enough, yes, you'll gouge, but it cushions the edge. It also doesn't obscure visibility. I was given the suggestion that for economic reasons, it would make sense to use a 3-inch disc on a 2-inch sander and curve it around. I found this did not work. It was a well-meant suggestion, and maybe in certain applications it would, but not for bowl making. What happens is you have all this loose stuff flapping around. It obscures what you're doing, and is simply not worth it. I gave it a try, and I said, I emailed the person who gave me the advice. I never heard back. I hope that he didn't pass this bad information on to other people, but then you try, you discover it doesn't work. You find that out for yourself, but as I said, there must be some application somewhere where it works, or it wouldn't have been suggested. Well, why would you then, since this prevents gouging, not just use this for everything? Well, the reason is that when you sand anything with edges, and these open segmented projects, which are a lot of fun to make, are nothing but edges. And once these catch, they tear, and anything that tears puts pressure on what you're holding, and I don't need to complete the story of what can happen. I've not yet had a project be flung across the room, but other people have, and it's always a danger. So you can either get a disc that has a plain edge, and they come in different, I think this is called abranet, or something like that. It's a different kind of abrasive. You can play around and see what you like and what works for you. Or you can just cut off the little points, and that works fine, because otherwise it's a standard size. So that often I use a supply of these. I buy them in grits starting about 60, and I go up to 400. You can buy them in 10 packs, and you use the more abrasive grits in the earlier stages. You start with the gentlest grit that will do the job. This is oak. This will be tough. I will probably start with a 60 grit. If I'm working with mahogany, I might try an 80 grit. The coarser the grit, the more scratches you'll have to sand out. So that you don't want to buy yourself extra work. On the other hand, you don't want to stand there all day shaving off infinite amounts of wood at a time. So sometimes simple trial and error, having the assortment there, and at 10 packs, they're not expensive, and when you know what you like, you can buy them in packs of 50, but by then you've established it. Are a good way to work. And I think that just about covers the various nuances. I would still advise for anyone starting out to start with a 2-inch and get an assortment of grits, say from 60 up to 320 or maybe 400 of the scalloped, and one interface pad. And then as you start working, you see what works, what doesn't work, and you add on, which is far more sensible than buying a complete system and having half of it live in your tool chest because you can't figure out what to do with it. But it's a good tool. It's ideal for the exterior. For the interior, I use the inflatable sanders because they fit in better. But for the exteriors, there's really nothing that beats it, and you really can do very complicated sanding without distortion, without getting edges, by simply using the proper combination of the right size, the right interface pad, the right density, the right grit, and the right configuration of disc. I hope you found this helpful. And if you're new to making bowls, as I said, get started simply. If you've been doing this for a while, this may give you some new ideas as to how to achieve the kind of effect that you're striving for. Thanks for watching.